Hey, Wits and Weights family. Today is a quick bonus episode. It's a replay of a conversation with hormone specialist Karen Martell about testosterone for women. This was from early 2024, and I'm replaying this because Karen is joining us for a live Q&A today, exclusively in Physique University. I wanted you guys to get a taste for the kind of specifics that she gets into regarding the mechanisms of our hormones, as well as how to test, how to interpret, what your doctor might be missing, how to treat it, what options are available. So very short, under 10-minute replay today. If you want to ask Karen questions about hormones, perimenopause, menopause, optimizing your health, join us in Physique University. Go to witsandweights.com/physique. Use my code FREEPLAN to get a free nutrition plan. And when you sign up today, you can hop on the call at 12 Eastern. If you miss it, there will be a replay, but if you could join live, you'll be able to ask her your questions. I also want to let you know, I fixed a broken link in our most recent episode with Karen. There was a link in the show notes to her hormone creams and oils that you can get without a prescription. So that link is fixed in the show notes. It's witsandweights.com/Karen Martell. And then use code Wits and Weights for 10% off. I'll throw all that stuff in the show notes, but enjoy the replay on testosterone with Karen. Let's go back to testing, right? Because testing is always a point of confusion, especially in the traditional healthcare system where it's like, if you could even get them to give you a test, it's blood work. And usually that's not adequate, but it might be for testosterone. So let's break it down. Exactly. That's one thing that makes it easy, right? So how should a woman get access, get tested, and then use the results properly?
So once again, some really shitty man to woman things here, which is testosterone's the only one that they'll ever test free and total. Women, they won't do estradiol free and total or progesterone free and total. It's only testosterone, which is a little bit frustrating. But that's a very accurate way to test your testosterone. And testosterone, we have a little bit of a peak right before we ovulate, I think, to give us that drive to go out and have sex and procreate. But pretty much we don't fluctuate like we do with our other hormones throughout the month with testosterone. It stays pretty even keel. We have that little flux on day 12 right before we ovulate on a 28-day cycle. But, besides that, you can kind of just test whenever in the cycle. You probably don't want to test on that peak day. Day 21 is what I would recommend because that's where we test the estradiol and progesterone in fertile women. So might as well do your testosterone then too. And so it is very accurate, but you definitely want to do both free and total in case your SHBG is too high. And then test your DHEA sulfate in blood. Test your sex hormone binding globulin. So we see if it's elevated. Because one of the things that's happening right now is that a lot of women are fasting and fasting, like hardcore fasting, 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day. And they've been doing this for a long time, or they've been eating a really low carb diet. And when they're fasting and not eating that much, they're also really low in protein. So low protein diets, low carb diets, too much fasting will all raise SHBG because it makes sense. If we were back in hunter-gatherer days and there wasn't a lot of food around, so we're fasting, right? Then the body is being told, don't get pregnant. There's not a lot of food around. And so SHBG naturally would go up because there's a food shortage. So it wants to bind up your testosterone, bind up your estradiol, and so that you can't get pregnant. And so too much of that starts to signal to the system, don't get pregnant, that's really the only reason why we're here. So your body's going to compensate for this, whether you like it or not, whether you want kids or not, or care about being fertile. This is what happens. So we have to be really careful with that. So testing, that's a good idea.
So a couple of things, because I put together a new episode about carbs coming out. And one of the interesting things about a higher carb diet was the increase in testosterone to cortisol ratio that they've seen, not in addition to the increase in IGF-1 that you talked about. So the fasting and the low carb and the low protein, are you saying that in general for most women, that's not recommended because of this? Or what are you saying there?
It's a fine line is what I'm saying, because we also become more insulin resistant because of the drop in hormones as we age, which means intermittent fasting can be a really, really important tool to start implementing because we need help being insulin sensitive. It's that women are taking it too far. They get results and then they're like, oh my God. And then they stop getting results and they think I better do it harder longer, right? Like I better, if I'm eating 2 meals a day, I better eat 1 meal a day. I should be doing a 36-hour fast or a 5-day fast. And you hear this from a lot of of the big practitioners that are out there on social media saying like, do 5-day fast once a month, do 1 36-hour fast every single week. And I'm like, no, most women can't handle that, especially in menopause. It stresses the system out too much. So you have to find that balance. You have to know where your cortisol levels are. You have to know where your insulin's at. So testing, of course, is super important. We don't want to guess what's happening in the body. So some women that are insulin resistant, their cortisol is okay, or let's say it's high, then I would probably say, you know what, you need to be intermittent fasting more, but you still want to make sure you're getting in the protein, because if not, then that SHBG will go up and it'll bind up those hormones. The other thing that will raise it is thyroid hormones. So if somebody's on thyroid medication, which a lot of women are, they don't realize that that's actually binding up their hormones and sending them into menopause early, which is something that happened to myself and nobody told me. And I was like, what's going on? My total levels of estradiol and testosterone are great, but yet I'm missing a period. I'm getting hot flashes, low libido. And then I finally heard Peter Attia who's huge. He was on Huberman Lab podcast, and he was talking about thyroid medication raising SHBG. And I'm like, what the frick? Why isn't anybody talking about this? Like, how many women are on thyroid hormones? So many.
A lot. So, yeah. This is why women are so frustrated, right? And because I could just imagine like a piano of keys, and every single key is like a different hormone. And as soon as you press one, the other one goes up or down, and they're all so interrelated, right?
Yeah.
Even the thing about energy availability, which shameless plug, that's what we talk about on your podcast when my episode comes out. Energy availability is that you need the energy there to support your hormones, but you don't want so much energy that you're gaining a ton of weight, right? And that's where it's like this balance for women to find that.
Everybody's different. Like we can't be, we got to get away from this one size fits all, because even though we know that, we're still doing it. The majority of women are still going, what's the next best diet out there, and trying it. And, everybody's doing keto. Well, I'm going to do keto. And it's like, but is that a good fit for you? Like, where's your thyroid at? Where's your adrenal system at? Where are your hormones? Like, you got to look at this full picture and then decide, okay, I'm, inflamed. I've got PCOS. I'm insulin resistant. Then keto could be great. And it could reverse all of those things. But then you want to, start carb cycling, and, there's a lot of nuances to it, and everybody has to find what's going to work for them.
So going back to the blood work, free and total testosterone, DHA sulfite, SPBG, what else?
SHBG, yep. And then, of course, you want to test your estradiol and progesterone as well, because there is some evidence that shows that women should actually be, like, if you're going to replace your hormones in perimenopause and menopause, there is some research that shows it's actually better to replace estrogen and progesterone first for 3 months, then put in the testosterone. So I always want to see that full picture. The other way that I want people to test is through urine metabolite testing. Now, oddly enough, testosterone is actually the least accurate on urine metabolite testing. So you think, okay, well, then why are you saying that we should do this, Karen? Well, in a Dutch test, which is dried urine hormone testing, we have testosterone on there. We've got the DHEA sulfate on there. But if you have a genetic SNP where you're missing these enzymes called the UGT enzymes, you won't pee out that testosterone. So it looks like you have none when you actually have plenty. So I always want women to do blood work on the same day or the next day so that we can compare the two just in case. It's more common in Asian backgrounds. So if you've got, if you're Asian yourself, or you've got Asian in your family history, then you may not have that enzyme. I don't have it, so I always look like I have low testosterone. But the other piece of the puzzle that we want to see on a urine metabolite test that blood work won't show is something called 5-alpha reductase enzyme. And so there's a fan gauge on the Dutch test, and there's 5-beta and there's 5-alpha. If you are leaning towards a 5-alpha pathway, so on the fan gauge, if you're way over to the 5-alpha, it means you convert your testosterone at a higher rate to what's called dihydrotestosterone, which is the most androgenic out of all the androgens. And so that's where we'll see women, if they go on testosterone replacements, then if that goes up, the DHT goes up, they start having the hair loss, the greasy skin, the acne. And so that's not pleasant. Women can get whiskers, can start growing the clitoris, as I call it. So your clitoris can actually start to get longer, and which is not fun. And I've heard of women this happening to them, their voice cracking, and just from being on testosterone replacement therapy.
And that's if you lean more toward the alpha side, you said?
Correct. Yeah.
And does that mean you shouldn't be taking therapy if that's the case, or you just have to modulate it and be more careful with the dosage?
Exactly. And you have to possibly take something that's going to stop that conversion. So it blocks the 5-alpha reductase pathway. There's herbals that do it. There's also medication, finasteride and dutasteride, that will block that conversion. So a lot of women will take the medication so that they can get the benefits of testosterone without having the masculine features. But there's lots of that, like saw palmetto is really good for it. Pumpkin seed. There's a bunch of different things, zinc, that can help.
That's it for today's replay. If you want the full conversation with Karen, including natural supplementation strategies, treatment options, you can go back and listen to the full episode 135. And remember, join us for today's live Q&A with Karen in Physique University. Go to witsandweights.com/physique. Use my code FREEPLAN. Again, witsandweights.com/physique. And I will see you tomorrow for the next full episode.